Hey, everybody, welcome to our weekly Ecosystem Office Hours call. I am your host, Jinx, and I am joined, as always, by the best and brightest in the Pocket ecosystem. We will start things off today with our protocol updates, courtesy of Fred.
Thanks, Jinx. Yeah, I think the question on everybody's mind is when beta testnet. Um, we're in a very tight crunch right now, and we're pushing as hard as we can. So I'll try to break it down as best as we can. Yesterday and into today, we are trying to have the actual blockchain creating blocks and running. That is going according to plan. We need to launch a quick regenesis this morning. So once that goes through, the blockchain will be live and running for beta testnet. From there, we're also in tight cahoots with PocketScan and the team on the Explorer. So thanks to them, the Indexer and Explorer, we're sprinting as hard as we can to get that up and live. From here, docs, comms, etc., and an official announcement should be in the very near future, either late this week or early next week. So for all intents and purposes, we are right on target from a timing standpoint, and we're very excited. And stay tuned for an announcement there.
Hell yeah.
Couple other things, just real quick. I just want to say thanks to all those who came out to support the F chains. Thanks for bearing with us. It does seem like we did hit some kind of scalability issue with the chain. Because when we reduced the number of app stakes or chains per app stake from 15 to 1, all of a sudden the claims came flooding through, and I think everybody's very happy with the way that the PocketScan numbers look. So thanks for working with us. Thanks for troubleshooting and giving tons and tons of data and info to all the node runners. Really appreciate it. All the F chains are live in the Growth portal. We did have to pull back Bitcoin because we're just not in a position to fix some of the API requests there, but we pushed out announcements to our customers, and I think generally everyone is pretty happy with the outcome. So thank you. Just going down the rest of the list, another big thing for us in the very near future with regards to Path is we are ripping AppGate server out of Shannon right now and replacing it wholly with Path. So that is a big piece of this. If you're interested in Path, or in becoming a gateway on Shannon, excited to have you on board and get involved. And then just from Path development, we are also working on some of the data integration. So having a database of users and accounts and apps and things like that. So getting it ready for more kind of a SaaS type integration. So stay tuned on more developments there. That is all that I have.
Outstanding. Great news all around. Any links that you want to drop into sidebar chat in regards to the path stuff, by all means, please feel free to do so. Mike, any further protocol or foundation updates to add on there?
Yeah, not too much on our end. We're playing support here for the Grove team, particularly Gabby. Some small updates. We're pushing forward with PGA, which is very exciting. So I would expect some more information coming out from that very soon. And we recently put up a couple job postings, actually, particularly for marketing and for marketing and a supply side role. One of our main goals here is to reinvigorate the supply side, and we'll have someone fully dedicated to that from the foundation side. But those are the main updates from our end.
Beautiful and good to hear. It's been interesting watching the evolution of the foundation's approach to node runners along the way, and I know a number of us in the node running community are happy to hear that news. Other gateway updates. Is anyone else here from the other gateways that wants to share? I don't see Sasquatch or any of the Raid Guild folks, porters. No. Okay, cool. In that case, this is the open portion of the call. So if you have a topic, a question, confusion, complaint, anything that you'd like for us to chew on or to bring to this team of incredible mind share here, then please come off mute and go ahead and speak it out. Also, if you are not able to come off mute, then you are welcome to type it into the sidebar chat, like I see Miss Kitty is, and I will be happy to read that out for you.
Real quick before Miss Kitty puts out whatever he's going to type, if you are a user of the gateway server, that has been archived on GitHub, and it does have some redirect towards Path, but Path is now the official gateway toolkit.
Beautiful. Gabby has posted the marketing lead job description in the sidebar chat, so please feel free to click on that. If you have any references or leads or anything else, feel free to send it along their way as well. And also the supply lead, so all job chats coming. Ms. Kitty asks, are we still getting an update on the internal MM project this week? Mike, if you want to speak to that, I think that there is an update on the entire approach to foundation funding coming shortly, end of the week, right?
Yeah. I'll be posting something on Friday, and we'll be happy to field any questions either on the forums or on the call next week related to that.
Beautiful. So we can set out some dedicated time in next week's call for answering those questions if needed. It's funny because I always think that there's going to be a ton of questions around some of this stuff, and then frequently it's like crickets, and then there will be something minor that is just like interesting, and we'll have 30 minutes of questions.
I do have one thing. Raid Guild is helping us build a product out for compare chains. The idea behind this product is to help node runners or node providers choose what chains they want to support in Pocket. We did receive a good amount of feedback so far, but I would really encourage everyone, especially on the supply side, to participate. Please be very honest with your feedback. So even if you think, hey, I don't think this product is worth it, or it should be merged with another product, any and all feedback is valuable. I will post the links for the Raid Guild team here in the chat.
Beautiful. And compare chains as in from a perspective of relay and earnings, yield, that kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. I had also heard rumblings around maybe Raid Guild helping to work on an updated and validated compare staking services site. Is that at all on anyone's radar, or should we prompt some additional research into that?
I think that's what Gabby was referring to, unless I'm mistaken there, Gabby. She might have just misspoken on compare chains versus compare
yes.
staking services.
Yeah, sorry. I was flipping between screens. Yeah, so for context, part of this project is to update the compare staking services page to make it a little bit more supply side friendly. So that's loosely calling it compare chains right now, but it needs a better name and some rebranding. But again, I posted the links here in the chat. Raid Guild is doing some UX research and really looking for feedback from the supply side. So please, please, please contribute your feedback, and this will help us determine the future direction of the product.
Beautiful. Okay, looking forward to seeing that. Other updates and topics? And to be clear, for anyone on this call, this hour is yours, and anything in the Pocket ecosystem is a relevant question. So don't feel like you have to be asking something specific to technical knowledge or whatever. I see Miss Kitty and HT are both typing. Pocket News, if you are listening, miss you wherever you are. 100% agreed. Pocket News Twitter account has been deleted, and even though the backup's up, I haven't seen any evidence of posting there. So, not sure if they just went on to other things and had life take over, or what the situation or scenario around that might be. But if you're listening, Pocket News, we miss you. HC, yes, completely anonymous to everyone, as far as I know. Oh, I mean, we knew him as Pocket News, but no, not knew who he was specifically, or they really. It was multiple people who kept the account running basically 24/7. Other questions? POKT's earn averages on new F chains. Wow. Yeah, those are big numbers. If you're listening to this on YouTube, you're probably not going to see it, but come back into the Discord and take a look at the community calls chat and look at that graph. It's pretty impressive. Miss Kitty asks, Grove team, any ideas how much traffic will be generated from the XRPL partnership? I'll preface whoever wants to answer this by saying, given that the side chain isn't launched yet, it's probably impossible to estimate because we don't know what adoption is going to look like. But Fred or Art, any of y'all have any thoughts on that?
Sure. Deal was to run validators for them. Then they asked if we would participate in their accelerator. So we are. I'm not sure exactly when that starts, but we're going to make ourselves known to the members of the accelerator next month. They are currently on their DevNet, but they haven't fully validated that our validator or validators are in good standing. There's like a lot of permission stuff that needs to happen. Once that happens, then we will most likely will open up an endpoint and do the same thing we do with all the other new chains we launch, at least for the DevNet, and we'll see what adoption looks like from there. Yeah, that's where we're at right now with respect to the sidechain deal.
I'd also comment too that just it's a relatively new chain and it's being developed by a third party separate from Ripple, but it's taking time to get the proof of authority is what it's called in Ripple certification. Basically, every validator votes to let in other validators, and also the documentation on running the nodes is extremely weak. So we've been having some technical difficulties along the way. But yeah, to echo Art's thing, or to echo what Art said, we're gonna get it up, we're gonna get it live, we're gonna get at least 2 validators on their DevNet, and then kind of move with them through DevNet to testnet to mainnet and onboard the chains as we do it.
Beautiful. And documentation on how to run a node really weak. Man, that gave me a March of 2020 throwback. No hate on anybody, but boy, in the early days, did we struggle to make it work.
I think most node runners would agree with me that I don't think it's just a March of 2020 thing. I think it's just an is thing.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked in the past about, having not just not just a how to, but also a best practices and a tips and tricks and secrets kind of resource. That's something that we haven't really had. We've had people in the community like Ben Van and other, very experienced engineer types share their time with us here and there and kind of help us get through a lot of these things and explain how certain stuff works. But there really isn't any kind of a singular resource for best practices on that. I think that's something that as we work on overhauling the docs, which are not in a terribly good place right now, we should be focusing on that as part of the supply side initiative. I'm already setting up work for whoever gets hired there.
Anoski, if you don't mind, I'm just going to put this out in this chat so they don't have to answer multiple times and it can be recorded. But Anoski is asking, can you elaborate more on the scaling issue with the F chains? Is there some sort of retrospective to understand more about gigastakes? So the easiest way to think about it, and one of the big kind of question marks when we onboarded more gateways onto Pocket, was the question of how many sessions could the chain reasonably handle, and the amount of claims and proofs that are logged to each session and stored on the blockchain. So I can't confirm this, but it seems to be the correct hypothesis based on the performance and the turnaround that we saw over the last 3 days. But when we originally switched to F chains, we had 1 chain per gigastake of the legacy chains. In order to help just make the migration easier, we just staked 15 chains, which is the maximum allowed chains on apps, not on nodes, per each gigastake. Now, 213 times 15 is a lot. It's like 4,000 or more than that, 40,000. I can't math in my head right now. Or no, it's 4,000 is 200. I'm off by 1. But yeah, so you're adding thousands and thousands of sessions because each chain per gigastake creates a session that you can submit claims to. So when we did that, you guys started getting flooded, or you guys being the node runners, you guys started getting flooded with these evidence is sealed errors or just no claims being actually submitted or proved, because it is my belief that the chain was just overloaded. And so yesterday we went back to 1 chain per gigastake, and magically the claims are flying through, and you can see the proof in the pudding on Pocket Scan. So that was the only major change on our end, and so it leads me to believe that that is the correct way to read this. It does reduce, from thousands and thousands of chain stake sessions to 213 just by Grove, and then the other gateways are doing n however many they're able to do. So yeah, that is the current running hypothesis, and it seems to have worked.
Beautiful. Thanks for that, Fred, and for making sure it was in the recording as well, because I know a lot of people had questions about it. Miss Kitty asks, speaking of supply side, any plans to have an app like Node Pilot for Shannon? For anyone who's not aware, Node Pilot is essentially a quick start node OS for Pocket nodes, but it is currently a Morse only product. The benefit of it is that it's a fast, easy spin up. And of course, the drawdown is that it has a fixed configuration type approach that is not quite as 100% configurable as actually running a raw Pocket node. But it was very popular among people who needed an easier way to get nodes up and running. So certainly a need for that, I think. But the question is, who would be responsible for that? You specifically said Grove team. I'm assuming because of their work on Path. Grove, do y'all have any sort of a quick node OS type products in the pipeline? I haven't heard anything about that.
I can definitively say no to that. Grove is not in the business of running nodes. We haven't run nodes in 2 years.
Yes.
James, on the foundation. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No.
I was going to say on the foundation side, we are looking to work with the PocketScan team to build something called Igniter. Igniter might not be as in-depth as NodePilot, or it's not going to be maybe the same exact product. We're still working through the requirements and priorities for it, but the idea will be that if you hold Pocket, you can go to this UI and quickly spin up nodes with the Pocket that you have, choosing from a selection of providers, or I believe there might be some sort of like load balancing round robin option. If anyone from PocketScan is on and has more deets they want to share, feel free.
Well, I'll
Yeah.
clarify here that NodePilot is specifically a product for node runners to use, not node runner customers. So that's
Exactly.
kind of the difference in scope there. But I heard Ramiro starting to speak up, so please feel free.
Yeah, we are not building anything to deploy local nodes of Pocket. The Igniter is more for customers, like you said. So it's not what Miss Kitty asks, and we are not planning to build anything to launch nodes or anything like what's it called?
NodePilot?
Yeah, we won't do anything like that for Shannon. At least not in our pipeline either.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, just to
Go
add a little bit. Yeah, it's a definite opportunity for anyone who wants to work on something like that, whether it be taking what's already been done or what's already out in the ecosystem. That's definitely something that the foundation would be happy to give out a grant for.
Fantastic. So if anyone has the technical and engineering chops to build a quick start OS for running Pocket nodes, there's some money in it for you. And if you're back end heavy and you need a little front end help, I would be happy to volunteer a little time to work with you on UX stuff as needed. Breezy says Shannon is pretty well documented also using Docker Compose. Yes, I mean, I agree on that broadly. I think the benefit of NodePilot was that it provided a Windows EXE type UI approach to that versus the strictly CLI approach. If you're comfortable in a CLI environment, you probably don't need a NodePilot type product.
Yeah, and just to underscore here, you know, our goal at the foundation is to bring on as many folks to buy and stake POKT, not necessarily run the nodes themselves. Just when we think about kind of the funnel here for the supply side of the protocol.
Yeah, agreed. It's, you know, one of the things I have in some of the other places where I've staked in the past, like Radix is a good example of this. Not that I'm recommending them as a token, obviously, whatever, do your own research or whatever, but their wallet has an all provider staking selector that just lets you drop down and see details around staking providers. You know, select one. So we have not had a product like that in the Pocket ecosystem to date. And I think that will help immensely with letting people just go to one place instead of having to try and navigate a bunch of different websites with a bunch of different information. Instead, they can just go somewhere, you know, plug in their info, select a provider, and stake. HT says, what about partnering with QuickNode or something similar because they are known for that? I'm not familiar with QuickNode being known as a staking provider for this. I'm not really sure what you mean in case you want to expound there. And Breezy, I don't know what the hell's going on with Wick. Honestly, that bot is pissing me off to no end, and it's doing things to like all sorts of people for no good reason.
It banned me twice.
Yeah.
I'll try to address the quick node question, HT. Yeah, so the way we think about it is we want to increase the funnel of folks participating in the network as much as possible. That should increase the incentives for folks to actually provide the infrastructure, particularly paired with more gateways and more relays moving forward. So, quick node is a generally, they kind of keep themselves as a node provider. I still believe there may be opportunities in the future to work with them, but we're kind of segmenting how we view the supply side as kind of the initial funnel for folks to come in and participate in the network, and having technical folks that can handle running the infrastructure, supporting that on the back end.
Okay, I don't know what's wrong with this thing, but what I believe I was trying to say, I lost my channel of thought. Yeah, what I think I was writing, I'm trying to get that back, was my teammate tried to, I don't know, do something similar to the previous socket that we had for NDA, where we were creating node setup for the community to use to get them started. But it's similar to Node Pilot, but not as automated as Node Pilot was, because we rather the node runners have the ability to make changes where they see fit, whereas Node Pilot was a one size fit all type situation. So we might look to see if it's worth doing, but the Shannon documentation is pretty straightforward, and it's already using Docker Compose. There's not much to really do there that's not already documented and pretty easy to deploy.
Work. Well, hopefully, we'll see more about that in the future. I know that perspectives on what is easy are probably pretty variable based on whether you are a experienced node runner like yourself versus somebody who's just coming in and trying to run stuff on their own hardware. But we will test that in real time once this becomes available. I know there's been a lot of things that I have tried to do that seem to be well documented, but not being a senior infrastructure engineer, I have struggled with. So I know that Jeff at QSpider, who's been my R&D partner on nodes, has helped me countless times trying to figure out things that I was screwing up that were easy and obvious to him.
Yeah, I would view it as kind of like an education funnel, right? You buy POKT, you stake with, let's say, Igniter. You get increasingly interested. Maybe you try your own hand at running infrastructure. So maybe you go to some version of Node Pilot. Then you level up to where Breezy's at, right? Where you can take the Docker Compose and start to tweak things yourself independently, right? So yeah, that's kind of how I would view it generally in an ideal world.
Beautiful. Other questions on that front?
Yeah, just a follow-up. This is more of a technical question for Shannon, and I'm going to try to verbalize it because I couldn't articulate it well in writing. So for Shannon, when it comes to the amount of for the staking amounts for a node. So for example, right now in Morse, I mean, we've got the different buckets from 15,000 up to 60,000, and if you want to stake more, then you have to add more pocket nodes on top of that. will that setup carry over to Shannon, or can you, for example, stake one node in Shannon with like 250,000 pocket, and you can just get away with one node? I'm not too familiar with the internals. It'd be helpful to get some clarity there.
Ramiro
If
said,
that question didn't make sense, let me know.
Fred or Mike, either of y'all have any thoughts or insight on that? I mean, I agree completely broadly on PIP 22. I had proposed an entirely different approach to stake weighting, which was similar to how the validator ticket system worked. I thought that was a simpler and much more graceful approach to allowing for increased rewards for higher stakes. For anyone who's not familiar, validators on the network are currently the top 1,000 nodes by stake. And I have some thoughts about making this a more validator-driven protocol. I think that there's some room for that. But if you meet the entry of 1,000, or to be in the top 1,000 by stake, or what we call the validator threshold, that gets you a ticket in the validation pool. And then for every additional stake of the current validator average that you add over the top of that, you get an additional ticket. I used to be able to get 3 tickets with around 150 or 160K staked. Those days are gone. I fight to maintain 2 tickets now because it's a little bit higher than it used to be. But the idea with tickets, meaning that every time a session comes up for participation, a ticket is your entry to be selected or a chance to be selected for participation in that session, or to be the block producer, so to speak. I proposed a stake weighting mechanism where there would be an equivalent to that in session selection for servicer relays as well. And to me, that made a lot more sense. The way that stake weighting actually works currently with this sort of like multiple on rewards type setup is overly complicated and has caused a number of issues along the way. In fact, PoKTScan, who has called for death to PIP 22, has had to deal with trying to calculate averages and show relative performance across what are some pretty broad buckets right now. And I think that's definitely something that could use some simplification. That being said, I mean, I don't want to just like smash everything down and go to just 15K again. I think that there's some room to think about all of those things simultaneously. I'd personally be in favor of raising the minimum stake pretty aggressively to completely bypass the existing stake weighting set that we have.
I don't know. I think Orshansky is not here, but last time we speak about this, I think Shannon will be launched being exactly like Morse in this matter, like 4 buckets, like today, 15K to 60K. In the future, I'm advocating for removing completely this mechanism, but reducing or increasing the base stake was never discussed, I think, in the Shannon development. I think it's more something that Michael will have to decide at some point.
I'm discussing it now. Let's go.
Okay, well, in that case, I'm for the opposite. I want lower stakes. All nodes, but with a lower stake. Just like everybody can spin up a node and start playing the node running game, like like to increase the decentralization of our protocol, because nobody will put 100K pocket in a node that he's running at home that gives you really low profit. So I would like to see more hobbyists running nodes in our network.
I think that's an interesting perspective on it. And Breezy, of course, is leaning over here on my side of the fence. Price is relatively low enough for us to make the decision right now. I think 60K is ideal. I agree with that. I'd actually personally set it at 100K, but that's just me. The biggest question I have, and I like the philosophy that you're talking about there, but with QoS issues being a constant, I don't think that encouraging a whole lot of like, let's run it on my home PC is necessarily the right approach. And if a lot of those people were joining the network, I think their earnings would be practically minimal given their comparative QoS to professionally run machines, you know?
Yeah, but that's up to the gateways to decide. I mean, they will do the QoS and they will select the nodes. So if I want to compete, why not?
Yeah, I've heard somebody else say something similar with, maybe there should be tiers of service available through the gateways, and you can decide for yourself if you're okay with taking a shitty protocol or a shitty QoS level in exchange for it being cheaper. That's certainly one way to approach it. Yeah, Ben
Sure.
Van's voting for 60K as well.
At some point, we have discussed something like that for LLMs to have like tiers of quality tiers because there are pretty wild differences between same kinds of nodes. So that could be also something that we can do, like staking tiers, or maybe set the minimum staking on a per chain basis. Like for a given chain, you need
Oh,
more,
that's interesting. Okay.
and make it something like that. I mean, we
Yeah,
can do
because maybe
anything
something
on
where
Shannon.
maybe super high traffic chains like ETH or whatever, we could afford to have a lot more nodes with lower stakes on them so that there's a broader selection.
Yeah, I think that would be really interesting to flesh out
Yeah.
once we deliver Shannon, no?
Yeah,
This is all
agreed.
futurology.
Hey,
I think
anytime you guys want to workshop that and get a call together, I'm happy to jump in there and be part of that call. Zatar is asking, what do you think about keeping the validator entry level in Shannon at about 75K pocket? And I'll just jump in here and say I think that's an absolutely terrible idea, simply because the total economic strength of proof of stake should always be incentivizing for higher entry levels in order to make it more and more expensive to validate on the network. I personally am working towards a plan to drive validator minimum thresholds up over 100K. I think that they are way too cheap right now, and every threat model scenario that I run says that it's not that expensive to try and like flash take over a network and produce an alternate block. Ramiro, any thoughts
I
on that?
I totally agree. I think that the validator game should be a money game, and we should up that stake as much as possible. The network only benefit for having tokens locked for validation nodes.
Yeah, we saw a strong increase in the overall staked security of the validator pool when we increased the validator percentage from 1% to 5% of the rewards pool. And I am strongly in favor in significantly increasing the validator percentage, assuming that we can work out a way for that to work with the supply side so that validation rewards can functionally be part of the rewards management that they already do with like operator versus output and things along that line. Because right now, node runners in general are not incentivized to run validators because it's difficult to deal with things like rev share. And if we can solve those problems and make it easy for node runners to run validators, then we can start an auction game where people are bidding up to be in that pool for the much higher reward stake. And of course, your validators, assuming that they're staked to chains, they're also earning service relays along the way. So you're not in any way like having to choose between a servicer and a validator. The three validators I run all are getting both block producer rewards and servicer relay rewards. Miss Kitty says, I don't like the idea of buckets like in PIP 22, but I wonder whether there's another way of tying rewards to the amount staked. And thinking about this in the context of retail hobbyist node runners would be helpful for that cohort to run as few pocket nodes as possible. Simple is better. Yeah, totally get that. And I agree completely on the buckets is a bad idea. I didn't like it then. I don't like it now. If there's a better way to approach that, I'm certainly open to being part of that conversation.
I think alluding to what Ramiro was just saying, I think we had a conversation about that a couple months back. I think I was suggesting the idea of staking per chains rather than per node, and assign a set amount to each node. For example, if we want to stake Ethereum, we can say, okay, how much does it really cost to run an Ethereum in US versus Europe? And we set an amount of stake for that region, and then the provider can take to the region that they can afford. If they can run their nodes in Europe and it's cheaper there to run the Ethereum node there, then they will stake it there. And if they can afford to do it in the US or both, then they can do that, and we can just play the game that way.
Fred says regions are passe, in my opinion. They only hurt the UX. Users don't care about regions. Passe, Ramiro, means like an old thing, something we don't think about anymore.
Oh, we speak French now. Great.
We do. Comme ça va?
Oh oui, c'est très bien, mais je ne suis pas d'accord avec ça.
Oh, c'est chic.
I think regions are useful. It will make it much easier for node runners to know where the traffic is. One of the things that I hear the most is, where should we stake our nodes? Where do I put the blockchain nodes, actually? And today we don't have information on that. And having that on chain, like allowing people to stake for only a given region or many regions, but having the applications to run their traffic through a specific region will give us a lot of visibility. It will be really useful, and I don't think it will affect the end user. Only it will affect the gateways, but well, that's their business.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a few different conversations around regional placement and about regional data in general. Region assignment, I know, is one of the later features that is getting rolled out in Shannon. I don't think that it's launching with that. And I don't think that we want, like, there are some issues around the way the node architecture is set up right now when it comes to being a node runner servicing those. We do not want, or node runners in particular, do not want a customer coming in saying, please just stake me to Ethereum, because they looked around and they see that Ethereum is the highest traffic chain. And we get, to be perfectly honest, uneducated requests by customers who don't understand putting their stakes where it's better for the health of the overall network, and where you might actually get a higher reward ratio because the chain is underserved, right? They just don't have the bigger picture perspective on that. And with regional service, it's exactly the same way. I think we do want regional info on chain. We want to know where nodes are at and see where bursts of traffic are and make sure that everything's well supported. But I don't want an end customer having a drop down that says, put me in Singapore, right? Like that doesn't make sense in servicing the clients of node runners. Fred, I'll hand that to you.
Yeah, we've studied this very, very, very carefully on our end. In fact, reducing the number of regions actually decreased latency substantially. But the real answer is, in 2024, the pipes going across the ocean are pretty darn good, and they're kind of in the best possible state, and network routing is what it is. The actual networking latency is not what matters. It doesn't matter at all to an end user. What matters to an end user is what I call perceived latency, which is the time from which they send the request till the time they get a response. And This discussion that we're having is arguing about the gateway's communication time to a node. It is completely irrelevant. It doesn't mean anything. It's actually less of a factor than if you had a faster computer. If you had a faster computer, if you had more compute power behind your node, you would win more relays even if you were in the wrong region. And we have data to prove that this happens every single day. A lot of people who just happen to be in EU are winning a majority of relays that originate from the US because their computers are faster. The computation time for you to produce the response to the request is greater than the flight time across the wire. So if you want to win more relays, buy bigger boxes. And don't worry about where the relays are coming from or where you put them. As long as you aren't putting them in Southeast Asia or Australia, you're good.
I don't know what happened after you changed the cherry picker, but before that, it was a huge thing to know where to place your nodes. I mean, we increased our income by like 30% only by replacing some nodes and putting some nodes on weird locations. But I know that the cherry picker was flawed, so maybe now your algorithm is completely different, but it would be really interesting to know more about your insights on that.
In our
because
in our
it's really
blog
important.
post, we've explained pretty in detail that the buckets theory of latency does not exist anymore. And if you can win against every other node runner by 1 millisecond, you will win more relays.
Wow.
We will literally go the Pocket network presents us with 24 nodes in a session per chain per gigastake. We will go to the fastest and best node every single time and burn it until the maximum amount of relays it is allowed to serve on the protocol is exhausted. Then we go to number 2. So if you're not first in the current world against Grove's Gateway, you are last. And I have said that 100 times. So be first, don't be last.
Yeah, but if I have the same machine in the US and Europe, exactly the same rig, so it will take the same time to process your request, and mine is, and the traffic is originating from Europe, then my computer in Europe will get all the traffic because it will be marginally faster than the one in the US. So it matters location in the end, at least what you're describing.
Yeah, and what I'm explaining is until you hit the maximum point of computational power required, the region is irrelevant. That's like the lower of the two priorities if you're going to consider that.
Interesting. So we always had as a target when we were home building nodes, 10 millisecond or less hop to the gateway and 100 millisecond or less total round trip. Are those numbers completely obsolete at this point?
They're not obsolete. I want to be clear. The perceived latency. So you have to remember when a user sends you a request, you don't just like respond instantly. You can't take away the fact that your node has to crunch a number and compute an answer and then give that answer back before it hits the wire. So I would very closely look at, yes, obviously you want to minimize your latency to and from the gateway. Like, yes, that is an effect, but more than 50% of the perceived latency of an end user actually happens when you are computing and producing the answer, not from flying across the wire.
Okay, so essentially CPU and RAM and NVMe IOPS is still like king when it comes to node performance.
Yes.
Okay.
Is this how Path works? Yes, we will continue to optimize for best nodes. We can have more discussions about this, but this is the approach that we'd like to continue to take for Grove because it has done us way better than the previous cherry picker, which hasn't existed in 2 years almost now.
Beautiful. We got some follow-up questions coming up in chat. Yeah, Gabby says, think about how some centralized providers only operate in a single region. They're optimizing node over regions. Yeah, I mean, it's, if you're in East Coast US and you can get a fast ping time to Singapore with a fast round trip, that's that's a pretty strong indicator that latency is not really going to be an issue in your total performance. Or at least not network latency. Your device latency might still play into it.
We have 3 primary gateways, one in Singapore, one in Ashburn, and one in Frankfurt.
Miss Kitty says, is the plan for Shannon to have one chain per stake node, or is that off the table? As far as I know, the Gandalf approach is still very much the plan, but any other insights there, Young?
I think you're right. I don't think we've messed with any of that. I think it's 1-to-1.
The biggest issues with Gandalf have not at all been the concept of one chain per node, as much as it's been figuring out the right coordination tools and incentives to the node runners themselves to make sure that all of the supported chains are well supported. Breezy says, I think we still need to focus on the region if we want the indies to return. We also need to move away from the daily average concept. It creates unnecessary greed. That's an interesting thought. I mean, I like the daily average as sort of a baseline, but I agree that it is used incorrectly quite a bit. Like, people think that variance from daily average is, some indicator of higher performance when frequently it's not. And sometimes those higher daily averages are accomplished in ways that end up getting node runners banged on the backside. So agreed. Personally, I opt towards nodes that are run by experienced professionals with high levels of reliance and trust. My confidence in where my pocket is staked is far more important to me than a couple of pocket each day either way. It is interesting to think about on the same, Fred. Interesting to think about the focus on regions if we want the indies to return. I do think that there may be some opportunities in places where throughput is not as readily available. Y'all mentioned earlier, like Vietnam, for instance, or certain regions. I know that in South America there are some darker spots that don't have as strong of network throughput, and I wonder if having highly optimized nodes in those regions specifically might help generate like a little better performance in some of them. But that is purely from a theoretical musing in my head, not at all based on like analytical data.
If I may reiterate on the latency thing, I just want to make it like abundantly clear that yes, we are a decentralized network, and yes, that is an important facet of Pocket Network, but our competitors aren't. And most major consumers of the services on the Pocket Network through gateways are looking for Web 2 style SaaS experiences. And this is 100% validated by the customers that have come to the various users. Small users don't generate very much traffic. It's enterprises that do. And so much so, I will just comment that even with the instability for just 1 to 2 days of the F-chain transition, one of our largest clients is now getting ready to leave us. So if it doesn't matter that we're decentralized, what matters is that we have high quality and we have a competitive price. And even though we are 67% cheaper than anyone else on the market for RPCs, people are still not willing to work with us on a 96% success rate. You need to have a 99.999% success rate when you offer a SaaS service. No one in here would use AWS if it only worked 96% of the time. No one in here would use Google Cloud services if it only worked 96% of the time. What do you do every time you open your wallet and the RPC provider is taking 3 seconds longer than usual and you get the zero balance, you panic. Where are my funds? Where's my money? That's what happens when you have a 96 or lower, not a 99.99999% success rate. So I just want to make that abundantly clear. Like, that is the game. That is what you play when you are a gateway and an RPC service provider.
Word. All right, y'all. Well, we are at the top of the hour. Nice, lively topic to come in near the end. I do see some additional chat stuff happening. Obviously, feel free to continue to use the chat tools as much as you like. Also, a reminder that the forum is out there, is a great place to centralize conversation with some thoughtful long form replies, and to keep a record of the conversations so that they can be used in future decision making. So I fully encourage y'all to make use of that resource in working through some of these heavier topics. But on that note, that's it for us this week. We'll see you again next week, same time, same channel, and thanks everybody for coming.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.